Welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report, and joining us, a brilliant young mind from the Rouge Foundation, Kesha Rogers. And Kesha has lots to talk about. We've got quite a list of things. So, Kesha, I'm going to give you most of the floor today, so you can start from the top. A bunch of topics such as a forum for a new paradigm, White House pounded on right to kill Americans. Of course, we call him Judge Dredd Obama, with the right to be accuser, judge, and executioner, and he is the law, I guess, is the where we could actually make a B movie over Obama's behavior, but it's unfortunately real. And Representative Walter Jones issues a Dear Colleague letter on HCR3 and an asteroid to fly by at 17,000 miles above the Earth on February 15th, which is Dr. D's birthday. So people need to realize that these objects are significant. We have a large comet passing by in October that's going to pass in the early region of Mars and toward the Sun. Large comets trigger off coronal mass ejections, and this one is very likely to produce a major X or M class CME. This asteroid that's passing 17,000 miles, they literally stopped in May, allowing us to see the data because it's getting closer and closer. So it turns out that near space objects now are classified. So is the whole space program gone black op. And unless you're Edwin Musk, owns PayPal and the Dragon space fleet, you basically don't have access to this information. So this is not good, making our space programs and our other advanced technologies that could obviate our problems in our world. So start off to the top, Kesha, and tell us the whole story.
Sure. Okay, well, let me start by giving people a sense of what has transpired over the past 24 to 48 hours that really shows the walls closing in on Obama and that a real brawl in the institutions are taking place. I want to put that picture out front first, and then want to give people a sense of what just took place at the international conference of the Schiller Institute and Executive Intelligence Review that I had an opportunity to participate in, because I think that's very important to get to the solutions on how we're going to deal with the insanity coming from this administration and the breakdown that we're seeing across the board. So just to kind of highlight a couple of things on what has transpired, just a few days ago, there was a memo that was released, a letter, should I say, that was sent to President Obama, that was actually sent from Senator John Wyden, who is a Democrat from Oregon. And what the memo actually said is that it was demanding that secret documents on the extrajudicial killings of this administration of U.S. citizens be released, and that the citizens, the fact that there are citizens who are believed to be in some type of collaboration with Al-Qaeda or Al-Qaeda-linked forces. And so once this was sent out, it also was sent to Brynan, who used to be the former CIA operator, and he was person who dealt with Saudi Arabia, also person who is head of the Obama drone policy. So without getting into all of the details on that, what this created was a real blowback to this administration's imperial policies that the president has the right to kill American citizens without due process. And a lot of what's coming out is that there's a bipartisan move with being led up by Senator by Senator Wyden, also people like Charles Grassley, Leahy, and others. I think it's 8 Democrats and 3 Republicans, or something like 3 or 4 Republicans. And what all of them are indicating is that there has to be an understanding from the Congress as to whether or not the nature of the decision by the executive branch, by the president, to decide whether or not someone is going to be killed by drone strike is warranted through due process. And so now this has created a real major blow-up where what happened just yesterday is that there was a leaking of a 16-page memo from the Department of Justice, the DOJ, and in this memo, it was leaked. It was actually supposedly given to the Senate and leaked to NBC News, where Michael Isikoff received this. And what it details is what the Justice Department memo reveals the legal case for drone strikes on Americans. And this thing is a 16-page memo, and I just kind of finished reading through it. And, it basically says that we can, the president has the right to kill or to push drone strikes. We have the right in the United States to push drone strikes against American citizens believed to be an imminent threat to the United States and in some type of collaboration with Al-Qaeda. And they go through three basic points of what gives that right. And just paraphrase, one is that that the person has to be deemed by a high-level official, some high-level official, to be involved in or related to some type of Al-Qaeda networks. Two, that it is infeasible to capture the person, and three, that the person actually poses some quote-unquote imminent threat to the United States. So, you just have, without going to the details, because people, can do the research. You can look at, if you go to NBCnews.com, and you can look up Justice Department memo reveals legal case for drone strikes. Right. So, and people can do that.
These are no different than the Savak in Iran that was supported by the CIA, the killer squads in the Soviet Union or Nazi Germany, parts of the SS. This is the rise of the Fourth Reich in America. And we see that Obama is a nascent dictator, virtually in every characteristic identical to Adolf Hitler, from the speeches to the traveling around and continuing to campaign long after he's even got his second term. He continues to mold the people to believe lies and then to continue to pretend he's their friend when he can actually call it a drone strike. Now they have FAA certification to have these drones on American soil, and it's said that within 2 years they'll be fully weaponized on American soil to kill Americans at a distance. They can reach out and touch someone.
Yeah, and the question that should be posed is, not only what right does the president have in exercising these extrajudiciary killings, but also what right does the president have when you look at the what we've put out in the recent period on the alliance of this administration to the Al-Qaeda networks in Libya and in Syria, and the fact that we have rightly exposed the alliance in the giving of weapons and arms to Al-Qaeda networks. So
you had some very humorous statement that you made. I'd like you to repeat it for everybody because it's better to come from your lips about the baseball cards of death, because that was quite a good joke and it also gets the point.
Yeah, it's the case that you have a president who is allying with Al-Qaeda, and every single Tuesday the president has a kill list where, he's looking at some baseball cards with pictures on it of so-called Al-Qaeda terrorist threats, and deciding who he's going to knock off on the kill list through his drone policy. And is it going to be he's involved with Al Qaeda, he's running our arms to Al Qaeda, so is he a part of that same list? Is he going to find his own picture on that list? And this is what we're dealing with right now, that you have a president who is in bed with Al Qaeda and is pushing a policy to kill American citizens.
Back in a moment. Welcome back. Kesha, please continue. This is a very interesting discussion. The policies of the West, by the way, are increasing the risk of a major Middle Eastern war. Can you give us your analysis of where things are going right now?
Yeah, I mean, where things are going is that we have, just as Mr. LaRouche has warned, the breakdown of the entire Westphalian system. The push of thermonuclear war is escalating. The entire Euro system and the transatlantic system is in free fall, hyperinflation, and you're at the end of a system. This is endgame for the British Empire. And you look at what Tony Blair typifies in that as the British imperial puppet that's pushing this end of a Treaty of Westphalia, end of a sovereign nation-state policy, that you want to drive nations, pit nations against each other, where you're not having a collaboration among nations, but you're having the threat and the drive of thermonuclear war. And I mean, this is what the representation of the imperial policy on the United States right now, being driven by President Obama, that he is completely opposed to the Constitution. He's pushing a policy for war. He's pushing a policy for economic collapse. And just based on the details that I was just putting forward a few moments ago about the brawl, the institutional brawl that's building up around the threats posed on the Constitution with the extrajudicial killings, the drone strikes, the disregard for due process. I mean, you're dealing with exactly what LaRouche warned about in April of 2009, that we have on our hands a carbon copy of Hitler, of Emperor Nero. And this is why Mr. LaRouche was warranted and very accurate in his assessment of putting the mustache on Obama. And
I would say that I'm going to give LaRouche a new title. You know how people get different specialties in the area of psychiatry? Well, I don't believe psychiatrists get properly trained in what I call geopolitical psychiatric analysis, but I'm going to say one of the few people that actually are what I call world-class geopolitical psychiatrists would be Lyndon LaRouche. He nailed it when he looked at Obama, because Obama has all the characteristics of the Nero complex. And and he's not just a puppet. He's an active participant in this evil. And his plan is to destroy America financially, to globalize us, and to do everything he can to foreign policy to generate a worldwide economic catastrophe and a Middle Eastern war at least.
Yeah, and anybody who is still sitting there in denial, who is saying, you guys were over the top, LaRouche is always, is over the top with the mustache on Obama. These people are in the same position of committing treason to the nation as Obama, because they are allowing for this to happen by these foolish ways of thinking and saying that actually exposing what this president represents, knowing that what he has done is exactly the policy that mimics what Hitler was doing, in the fact that, he's controlled by the same Wall Street, London financial interests, and that he has no regard for the Constitution whatsoever, and no regard, should I say, for human life. That's exactly what you're dealing with.
Right, and that includes, by the way, Obamacare, which is only marginally health care. It doesn't control costs. It's actually primarily a power grab against people's pension funds, bank accounts, and literally weaponizes the IRS to literally get into everybody's life completely. What this does is it strips down and federalizes everything to the point where that eugenics is required. In fact, the first package went out to doctors in the last month, and it's now estimated that up to 46% of physicians will quit. We're not just talking about 30% of those within 5 years of retirement. We're talking about overall 46% of physicians in this country are now planning to quit or are already closing their practices.
Yep, and this is exactly what we in 2009.
This is what Obama wanted to do.
He should have a
hard hat for Yeah, you should have a hard hat because we now have an extra millions of paid people that need health care. We don't broaden it to alternative care. We don't control the cost of drugs, medical equipment, supplies, etc. We don't control the cost of insurance, which are ripping people off, or hospitals. And, of course, they never control costs where, if you even see Medicare, the cost can vary up to 700% across the country. And there's no mechanism to make it more efficient like any corporation would be. And as a result, it's like the Argentinization of America. They're going to destroy this country financially. I expect that if the Republicans don't get the handle on this, we're going to have a bank holiday before the summer.
Right, and that gets to the very point of, I just want to make this point quickly here because, I think people at this time have to get a sense of what LaRouche's authority has been in not just the fact that he was right on calling the shots on the Nero personality, the Hitler personality of Obama, and putting the mustache on Obama and worrying about what this guy was going to represent or be capable of, but it really has to go back to his authority for the last 60 years in this fight of the question of what is the true human nature. What is the nature of man versus animals? And who is the real enemy that we're battling? And that enemy has been a British imperial system, which LaRouche has rightly identified for the past 60 years. The other aspect of that enemy has been the enemy within the minds of the population to keep them from thinking, to keep them enslaved, and to keep them thinking that they have no they can have no control over the situation or can't change the situation.
Yeah, which is also not true. First off, just look at a list of half a dozen things that can be done right away. We need to have Glass-Steagall. We need to have further rules for the Fed Reserve. You may not necessarily have to take it over, but you need rules, so it has to answer to Congress only, not the president. We don't want the president to have a carte blanche to get as much money printed as he wants. We need to have state banks set up. We need a credit system like the Hamiltonian system, which is a brilliant financial founder of America. We need a system where we start kind of what I call geoengineering the planet to allow it to tolerate the climate change that's occurring, to adapt to it, and to control water distribution like NWAPA, et cetera. And we'd also be involved with breaking the wall down between Tier 1 and Tier 2 science. So things like tokamak fusion reactors, our space programs have now gone black op for 35, 40 years, that all of these become open, and that university professors get access to this information and the public about the real solutions to problems that they don't want to tell us about, or real dangers, such as near-Earth space objects, coronal mass ejections, which are not hardening the grid too, which is a major disaster just waiting to happen. I mean, it happened in 1859, the Carrington event. And if it happened again, like even the one like in northern Quebec, and it was geocentric to Central America, the United States, much of the U.S. would lose its power grid from 6 months to 3 years. So there's a whole series of solutions. They're very simple. We need to stop industrial espionage with countries. We need to stop trading with countries and allowing them to manipulate our politics and our finance. And we need to make America first.
That's right.
We haven't done that. Back in a moment with Kesha Rogers. Welcome back, and Kesha Rogers. Let's continue this dialogue. Lots of information to cover today.
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah.
You hear me?
Yes, we can. Your line
Okay.
is perfect.
Great. So what I wanted to continue with was just what you were bringing up at the close of the last session here on, that we have to give people a sense that there is a solution, and that solution is the three-point policy platform that you went through briefly just a moment ago on the fact that we have to have Glass-Steagall and as a starting point for dealing with this economic breakdown crisis. And I had the opportunity to attend and participate in a conference held by the Schiller Institute, which is a LaRouche-affiliated organization, and the Executive Intelligence Review. And there were probably over 300 and something participants at this conference. And one of the things that was actually developed, the nature of the conference was to bring forth the theme of a new paradigm shift for civilization and how we're going to change the cultural direction as well as the policy that is shaping nations throughout the planet. And
well, one of the things that we have to look at is what is money. The basics have to come back. What is money?
Right. What is money? You know, what is the value in money? And
because really, money in the last century
value outside of real productivity.
Right. Right now, what they've done is they've actually created ghost money out of thin air that has no value. In the real economy, oil and energy has real money. But if we release the Tier 1 science of tokamak fusion reactors with helium-3, which is being currently mined on the moon, we would, number one, within 10 to 15 years, we would have every nation on Earth would have plenty of power, and then basically unlimited wealth could be developed, including geoengineering the planet to protect us from near-Earth space objects, protecting our weather and food supply, and there would really be no need for war because wars are basically always promulgated on want.
Right, and you're bringing up an important point there. Just let me make this one point, and then I'll address that, which was that at this conference, Walter Jones actually sent a video presentation where he urged the participants in the conference to endorse the two bills that he has been putting forward and working on. One, HCR 3, which says that no president can go to war without the consent of Congress, and that this is an impeachable offense. And also the bill that he's working with Congressman Marcy Kaptur on, H.R. 129, which was just reintroduced in the new Congress on the reinstatement of Glass-Steagall. And at that meeting, there was a unanimous endorsement of over 300 and something participants to these two bills that were called for by Congressman Walter Jones. And what we're doing is, after that conference, I had an opportunity to go into the Congress and present this to several congressional and Senate House and Senate offices, and give people a sense that we are moving the population to demand that their Congress members take action now, that without Glass-Steagall immediately rammed through, then we're faced with a hyperinflationary collapse that is going to be unstoppable. And we got several very positive responses to what we're doing in shaping that policy.
Very good. So that's excellent.
Yeah, on this question of what you were just bringing up on the what we're seeing right now in terms of the threat that's facing mankind and how we're going to deal with this. And you were just bringing up these asteroids. You want to?
Well, yeah. The first one is we have an asteroid passing my birthday that's 197 meters across. Now, they say they started off 100,000 miles above the Earth. In May, they actually classified all near-Earth space objects as classified data, so the public or Tier 2 scientists at universities couldn't get access. The fact is the asteroids and comets especially, are plasma objects, and they can interact with planets causing earthquakes and volcanoes, major weather changes, and superstorms. But when they interact with the sun, they can actually create a coronal mass ejection that can be a kill shot. And I think that we need to be aware that space weather is a planet changer. It's a game changer. The number one thing that I'm most worried about next 5 years is a kill shot from the sun. And the degradation of our ozone layer with major destruction of food crops and the oceans caused by strobing from a CME. The end of the power grid would basically turn our civilization not to the Stone Age. The Stone Age would be like the Sandals Resort. This would be like being born into the innards of the ninth ring of Hades. That's what it'll be like. It will be horrifying.
Right. And, I mean, I think you have to really go back to what our abilities would have been back in the 80s, where Mr. LaRouche played a crucial role in his involvement in working with the Reagan administration when Reagan adopted the policy of the SDI, Strategic Defense Initiative, because this addressed exactly what you were just saying. How do we create new nuclear technologies? I mean, how do we create new technologies to deal with
the problem is I already know, because I had Q-level security clearance, so I know
thermonuclear war.
Yeah, they already have, for example, there's no need for the typical old-style boiler reactor. It's an extremely inefficient and dangerous way to create heating. Boiling water with decaying fissionable material. Nuclear fusion reactors, and this is how it works. I'll explain it. And we did two presentations for about an hour yesterday with Dr. McCanney. He's in an undisclosed location, and he was where he was doing his research, and we did a Skype connection. And he explained that basically, if you do the research, the center of the sun is actually quite cool, like a large planetoid, and the nuclear reactions occur on the surface of the sun, which literally creates the fusion reactions of hydrogen to create helium. But also, part of the reaction generates helium-3, which boils off the solar wind. And because of the Van Allen radiation belt, it ends up landing on the moon and other space objects. So the moon has millions of times more concentration of helium-3. Helium-3 is a primary fuel of fusion reactors. And all you need to do is what's called concurrent inverse spiral magnetic field compressors that literally compress a field and directly convert helium-3 to hydrogen. And what the helium-3 does, it creates a fusion reaction that generates only hydrogen. And as a result, you end up with total conversion to plasma, which is directly converted to power, virtually 100% efficient. They have used these in our Aurora space fleet, which have been in service for 35 years. In fact, they were starting to come out of service in 2010 because they even have more advanced interstellar space fleets than that. Most people aren't aware that we have space-based weapons platforms. 95% of their activity is aimed out into space against nearest space objects. And something the size of a pencil lead or an eraser can puncture through the side of a satellite or a spacewalker or a communication satellite or military satellite. So they have to move these continuously and be tracking them. They have technology that literally is, in lineal terms, centuries ahead of what people think we have. But they walled us off into Tier 1 science and make it classified. So right now, the current space program is literally the outgrowth of the 1930s German Nazi program for the shuttle. The real space program is completely black op now. That's what I find disturbing. And the fact is, solutions for real problems such as peak oxygen, we don't have peak fuel. It's all a lie that fuel was created from charcoal and from decaying ferns from hundreds of millions of years ago. I'm sure it can happen, but it's a very minor part of the cause of coal and fuel.
That's why we need a real space policy. That's why we need to actually take up what LaRouche has been calling for with the Mars mission, as well as, a policy to go back to the moon to investigate the use of these resources.
The thing is that we already have been on the moon since the 60s, even before the Eagle landed. We've also had a colony on Mars since 82.
We might have, but we're not doing what we need to do right now to actually create the launching pads to get us to Mars.
What they're doing is completely different spacecraft, and what they've done is bifurcate society into a hyper technologically advanced society, and the rest of us left to decide how we're going to die here on Earth. And Obama is pushing the button to destroy our nation and our world.
I remember when I lost my mind.
Welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report. What I just said, some people may find a little hard to believe, but when I got sat down by the director of U.S. Space Command years ago, and I was recruited on various projects, including in 77, wanted to work on the MS tissue repository at UCLA, and the other 4 projects were all classified DARPA projects for creating super soldier. When I worked with CCOM and had Q-level security clearance, and they literally said, I got a call to Jesus. They said, a call to Jesus talk. He says, now, don't talk back, Deagle, or any of you doctors, because we're going to tell you straight up, because we don't want you to freak out when you find out what's really going on here. The fact is that most of the problems we have already have solutions, but a lot of the science has not only been shrouded, it's actually been purposely hidden from the public, and the dangers of a comet passing the Earth that can trigger off earthquakes, superstorms, etc. with the electrical discharges that affect the geomagnetic sphere of the Earth and can trigger off earthquakes, volcanoes, and extreme weather. And passing near the sun, it can create a coronal mass ejection, a major superstorm, sending hundreds of trillions of tons of protons and plasma to the Earth that can ring the Earth like a bell and destroy food supplies, strobe it with electrons, protons, and ultraviolet light, and literally making, if you want to call it, sterilizing the Earth of its former life forms. And we aren't putting any research into this at all, at least on the public level. And what I've seen is evidence that they have, quote, bifurcated society and made a decision many years ago to do this.
And let me just say, I think the problem is that there's no sense of a mission, and we have to restore a sense of a mission to the nation again, as was actually envisioned and understood by President Kennedy on the Apollo mission. And what we're looking at right now is a complete collapse of any type of idea of a vision for the future. And this is something that Mr. LaRouche has been continuing to emphasize, that
Obama actually made sure that he was the caretaker of the end of the public space program.
Absolutely. And if you remember, I was the one fighting to put a stop to that, put a stop to his, ripping apart of the space program with my campaign to save NASA and impeach Obama. And it continued to do so right now. And you look at the results of what the Obama policy against our space program has been. We don't have the capabilities right now to protect ourselves from asteroids or, severe weather threats, and we're shutting down our satellite capabilities. You look at, on Thursday, you have this asteroid, the DA 2012 DA-14, that's going to come within even closer to the moon, within 17,000 miles from the Earth, and
that's what they'll tell you. It could be closer than that. We don't know.
Yes, could be closer than that. And, people are saying, well...
Closer than our communication satellites is what we're saying.
Right. And so what happens when if it was to knock out communication satellites and navigation systems? So how are we preparing ourselves to deal with this threat that's being posed on the existence of life on the planet? And, when you shut down your space program, when you don't have a mission and you don't have a vision, as what Mr. LaRouche has laid out, why we have to have a full-fledged space program, fully funded Mars program, a mission orientation, this is what Obama is completely opposed to, and he's shown that with his policy. But it also requires a sense from the population of thinking outside of the realm of just what is the immediate crisis in front of us.
But not only that, it provides solutions to everything from aging to growing crops on the Earth to protecting the planet against we call extinction-level events that are basically due to space weather. I mean, the reason why our civilization will be here 10,000 years from now, hopefully we'll get smart enough not to do war anymore, which is really obsolete at the moment. But the real thing that's going to cause an extinction-level event is our lack of concern for space weather, space objects, and transient effects of things like near-Earth red dwarf stars, comets, which can trigger off coronal mass ejections, asteroids that can strike our satellites and knock out our communication satellites. We just don't pay attention to these. But even in the ancient world, the monks of the Middle Ages would always draw comets. The ancient ministers and high priests of Sumer in Egypt knew darn well that space weather was important. They didn't understand it, but they knew when they saw these objects, it caused major cataclysmic events. The fact is we try to pretend that it's not there because the news media like Fox News is the best of the bunch, and the rest of them are completely out in la-la land. They won't ask good questions. They won't propose things. They won't tell you that there's classified information like Tier 1 science, like Dr. McCanney talked about yesterday, that's completely hidden from the Tier 2 scientists. As I said before, the Tier 2 scientists up to the tenured professorial level have access to 4% of the sum total of knowledge in their sphere of influence and knowledge. They don't have access to the advanced knowledge base that's been developed by humanity. It just doesn't happen. It's a need-to-know basis.
what we do have access to is the power of the human mind to actually change the direction, the conditions in which we're being subjected to right now. And
exactly,
that's, that's what the dinosaurs didn't have. The dinosaurs didn't have a space program. That's why they hadn't faced it.
If they had a near space object to deflect or put out in space, an asteroid coming toward Earth, or more likely a comet,
they might have been in a different position.
Right, we would still be scurrying around, not turning into human beings. Let's put it that way. And I don't believe in evolution. I believe in what I call progressive recreation, which is quite a bit different because it's based on a biological and a plasma physics model of human physiology and cellular physiology. Progressive recreation. So what I see going on in our world is a level of apathy, ignorance, and willingness to accept the party line from the media that's disturbing. I mean, the Renaissance period, people would ask questions. People don't ask the tough questions anymore. Whether it's in school or their church or whatever, or politically is worse because they're often corrupted out of even asking good questions. They're putting in a position where they're corrupted to the point where don't ask good questions or the money, the gravy train will stop.
Yeah, don't ask a question because it's not popular, and you have to go along with sense perception, what is popularly accepted. And that is exactly what Mr. LaRouche has been defying for even going back to his early childhood years, is that, the problem with our leadership today, the problem with society today, is that they don't want to actually act on what's principally right. They want to act on what are other people going to think about what I'm saying, what I'm doing, whether or not it's popularly accepted. And this is what the cause of a breakdown of civilization represents. This is where you have a Roman Empire where people are just tossed into the ring and told, that you are nothing more than an animal. And that's what we have to get across to the population, that the power of what we represent as human beings is the idea that we are different from the animals and that we actually have the capability of changing and acting, or should I say acting for the future. And I'll just make this point on this conference because I can't go through the whole conference, but I think this is a powerful point to make on what this conference represented as a real vision for what we're capable of creating. And one of the things that, several speakers at the conference, including constitutional lawyer Bruce Fine, who drafted the impeachment proceedings, professors and others who participated. But one of the key aspects of this conference was the role of classical culture and music, classical science and art. And what people got a sense of when they heard these speakers, you had famous opera singers who were participating in the conference, and you had people who were involved in we had a whole cultural performance performing pieces from Bach and Mozart and so forth. But people had the sense of the empowerment of the human mind and what we're capable of creating as a sense of beauty in the culture, which is missing right now. And I would encourage people to go, and I think you have the links on your site there, to that conference proceeding, because that's what's going to create the ability to really address the need for a real change in the thinking of the population, a sense of beauty in the culture. So
how
people can go and watch that.
How do they contact LaRouche to get more information or to get what we call marching orders?
You can go to LaRouchePAC.com. You can find the proceedings for the conference and more material there. If you have any questions, you want to talk to me more, you can call 1-800-922-2907. 1-800-922-2907.
Excellent discussion today, Kesha. It's we need to stay solutions-oriented. We need to think out of the box. We need to literally be, as LaRouche says, we need to be the negentropic force with the energy flux density to be literally the change force, so that our civilization will be here 10,000 years from now or 1,000,000 years from now, and it'll only be if we decide to create that future. Back in a moment with hour number 2, hour 3, Tim Alexander. You don't want to miss it.